Start with Nino, Fanlo, the CFO of SoFi, Kenneth, Director of Student Advocacy at LendKey, and Stephen Schwartz, the Wealth Management Advisor at Northwestern Mutual. If you could please give them a round of applause. And you could also, the hashtag for today's event is NextGenFinance. So let's get started. Let's start with Nino. What are some innovative alternatives to traditional loans?
Okay, well that sounds like a commercial. SoFi, which I addressed earlier, provides loans for graduate students and for refinance of previous student lenders. It tries to significantly reduce the cost of the loans from a couple percentage points to as much as 4 percentage points, as well as providing career placement, mentoring, and frankly social membership activities. We're one model. There's a couple other companies that are trying to do a similar model. I think the other more innovative approach is a number of companies have also worked to try to provide means of retiring their debt going back to the companies that are paying capital on that.
Would anyone else like to follow up? Well, let's get to the next question. Ken, when do you recommend starting to pay off your loans?
Great question, Zach. And just to prep that too, just a little background on myself. My name is Kenneth. I'm Director of Student Advocacy at LendKey, and I had worked at the financial aid office for about 10 years prior to getting on board with the company. And when it comes to paying back student loans, I've seen everything, both good and bad, in the process. So I have a very deep-seated understanding of what's involved. And my true recommendation is start paying it off as soon as you take the debt out. I mean, at the end of the day, you don't have any time to waste. With the amount of money they're asking you to borrow in many circumstances within college these days, why would you wait to pay it off later? The amount of interest that could potentially generate between now and the 4 or 5 years it's going to take you to finish school, maybe even grad school on top of that, is going to add tons of interest costs on your loans. So why don't you start paying your loans off now? If you have work-study income, you have enough income to make a $25 or $50 payment while you're in school. Why not just do it? Because you know what? The long-term benefits of saving money on your interest costs are going to be there. And also, you're building some kind of discipline with your own money and a positive record on your credit showing you've been making payments on your loans. So when push comes to shove, why wait? And that's my strongest recommendation. The days of deferral, in my opinion, are over. It used to be, I'll defer my loans off, I'll wait until after I graduate, I'll get that good job, and then we'll pay it back then. Well, guess what? Things have really changed, haven't they? So why don't we just start making payments on our loans as we borrow? The same way if you were to buy something with a credit card, do you wait until next year unless you have 12 months no financing, right? Unless you have that, you start making payments right away. You don't waste any time. That's my best recommendation to anybody who has that question.
And the current environment, what do you see students doing?
Well, you have a mix. Some students are very proactive about it, and I'm very impressed with some of the students I've met that, they use, Excel spreadsheets and modeling, all this different stuff to figure out exactly what their parents are going to be, and they predict how much they're going to save. There's tremendous resources from different companies that give you visualizations of how you're going to make payments, like Mint, for example, and stuff like that. I just see that some students still want to ignore it. They say, I can take the federal student loan program, I can take a Stafford loan, or it's now called a direct loan. They don't have to make any payments on it. They're not required to. So that's the government standard, that's my standard, that's what they adopt. The other half of the students are saying, hey, you know what, whatever standard there is, at the end of the day, I have to save some money because interest is going to grow no matter what. I need to pay it off. That being said, there is a subsidized direct loan where the interest is paid for by the government while you're in school. But if you're taking out a private loan or an unsubsidized loan in addition to that, those are going to generate interest normally, and those are the ones really want to tap the most.
Thank you. Stevie's question for you. How can you reduce loans and accelerate income?
I think a lot of it starts with an awareness about where you're going. A lot of times people are sort of just coasting financially. They're getting they're a year or two out of school, they're getting a paycheck, and they're just making the minimum payment, and they're saying, I'll deal with this down the road. So theoretically, they're kicking that proverbial can down the road, if you will. And the awareness point that I'm talking about is, to echo his point, putting it on a spreadsheet and seeing what the economics of it really are. I'm in the wealth management business, and I deal with individuals and help them plan out their cash flow and whatnot. I had a conversation 2 days ago with an individual. She has $80,000 in student loans, and she's paying $659 or so a month. So that's about it's a little bit more than $7,000, almost $8,000 a year that she's making payments on. And I ran an amortization table. I think the loan was a 20-year schedule, and she was going to pay approximately $80,000 in interest on the life of that loan. You could imagine her reaction was not one of a pleasantry when we went through that exercise. So a lot of it has to do with an awareness, and then I think getting specific to your question, the first thing is just budgeting. Create a budget. What you don't want to be is at the margin, where if you get out of school and you have an income of, let's say, $2,000 a month, and all of your expenses are $2,000 a month, and there's not a lot of wiggle room, so to speak. But if you have some variable expenses, such as if you're going out to eat with your friends a couple times a month, maybe you're taking an extra taxi or two around town that you shouldn't be doing, and if you can, put together a savings plan where you're saving an extra $75 or $100 a month, and you put that towards your student loan, over time, it's going to help. And it's not like you're going to feel a difference in 3 months from now or 6 months from now, but what you will feel is a sense of accomplishment, number one. And number two, it's really 3 years down the road, and 5 years down the road, and 7 years down the road where you've really started to move the needle. Furthermore, to that point, I think more of a sort of outside the box tool, if you will, to try to pay down the loan is to examine the rate of interest. And there may be what I call a parental financial opportunity. And what I mean by that is an example. Let's assume your parents own a home. And if the value of your parents' home is perhaps $500,000 and they have a mortgage of let's say $200,000, then they have $300,000 of equity. Your parents may be eligible to tap into some of that equity. And if they can take a home equity loan from the bank for maybe, if you owe, let's say, $50,000 of student loans at a very high interest rate of in excess of 10%, if your parents can borrow from the bank in this repressed interest rate environment that we're in, at maybe 3% or 4%, and that interest is tax deductible to your parents, they can give you that money to help either bullet down your payments or retire your debt. And then you can contractually go into an agreement with your parents where you're making the monthly payments on that loan that they have just taken out. But it's really at the end of the day, a win-win story if your parents are willing to help in that department.
And what would you recommend to students that have high interest rates, even students now thinking about taking out loans? Are there any loans that you would recommend? Any companies that you would connect to?
I sat in the last 10 minutes of Nino's presentation, and I think that's a terrific platform for those that are eligible. And if anyone didn't get a chance to listen to that, I had never even heard of anything like that. So that really raised my eyebrows as a great platform to look at.
Do you want to?
Well, no, it's extraordinarily kind.
We don't know each other, so I'm not plugging it.
Our program is to take folks that have graduated and show discipline in their academic success. I think, by the way, what both gentlemen just said to you, life starts immediately. Start paying down your obligations and start being sensible. There was a great article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday about the benefits of discipline. Discipline brings satisfaction and self-accomplishment. What we do at SoFi is we provide absolutely the lowest rates that anybody can get. And those rates are available from demonstrated academic and professional success. As I said in the panel, the government has a very strange system. It gives you the lowest rate when you've accomplished the least, when you've enrolled, and it never gives you a break. For graduating, taking on graduate education, in fact, it goes the other way, gives you a higher cost for having an incremental education. It doesn't give you a break for getting a job. It doesn't give you a break for having a job for many years. We give you a break for every step of the way. The more successful you are, the less we charge you. This is entirely rational. I think it is a program that benefits those that have demonstrated success and discipline, and I'm highly confident we'll get people to follow what we're doing, and it will reduce the cost of education, as it should, for people as they go through their lives and demonstrate success. Makes no sense. Makes no sense. We're talking about home equity loans. The example there was a low amount of debt to the value of the house. When someone has a low amount of student debt to their ability to pay it, which is what we do, why shouldn't you get a lower rate? And why the heck would the government induce people to take education by giving them lower rates in the beginning that they know will go up over time? It should work the other way around. The highest rates should be when you enter school, to make sure you're darn serious about the fact that you want to do this. And as you keep getting through semesters and getting through school and accomplishing success, it should go down, not up. It should go down, not up. I would encourage you, both these gentlemen said, please pay your loans as soon as you can. Everybody can pay something. It is impossible. You can have an iPhone and get a cappuccino, but you can't make $10 payments. It's crazy. It is absolutely insane and beyond the comprehension that people believe that you should not pay anything on an obligation for 6 or 7 years. And for anybody who takes personal and professional obligations, among those are the ability when someone lends you something or does something for you, you repay.
Well, for all you students out there, definitely speak to Nino. So you spoke about the government and how baffling it is for their current policies. Can any of you speak about that? Why the policies are what they are?
Okay, sure. One thing, student loans are not dischargeable bankruptcy. You guys heard about this, right? Anybody had feelings about that? Some people don't like it. Some people are indifferent to it. But if you're in a situation where you take on a lot of student loan debt, government regulations say you can never get rid of it in bankruptcy. Now, you can get a mortgage, you can get that thrown out of bankruptcy somehow. You can go to Vegas and run your credit card and somehow get that thrown out of bankruptcy too. But if you want to dedicate your life to going to college and take out debt to do it, and things don't go the way you'd like them to, very hard to shake that debt, right? So, why is it like that? Well, a lot of it has to do, like talking about earlier in the presentation upstairs, is that if you didn't have some kind of guarantee of repayment attached to the loans that the government gives out because they approve everyone with no questions asked, then it would be very scary because people would just get their degree, declare bankruptcy, never pay back their student loan. That would be crazy, right? You can't have that. You have to have some kind of protection in place. So there's a lot of controversy around this regulation. So if you're a student right now, you might hear a lot of people talking about it, wondering how it's going to affect you, what's going to happen. Well, let's put it to you this way. The government would not be able to guarantee loans to everybody in the way they do if they didn't have a guarantee of repayment in place to make sure that they can recollect the money on the back end. So that's kind of like why it is the way it is. If you're just, a student, if this is new to you, this is all new information to you, start reading up and learning about these regulations because they affect you, they affect all your friends, and they affect the way in which you absorb education in your life because it's very expensive. And they're saying this is how much it's going to cost, and they're forcing it through debt. Look, the whole world of study around this, the whole presentation now, just for brevity's sake, I won't. But the more regulations we tack on to the way these debts are working, the harder and harder it is to make sure that you can sort of manage it the right way. You need to start taking personal ownership of their debts so they can pay it back themselves. But there's a lot there.
I'd like to add the educational business benefits immensely by government support. You're able to charge a higher amount of money if the government guarantees you financial access. If everybody got a loan to go to Starbucks, the price of Starbucks would go higher. If everybody got a loan to buy a house, the prices of the prices of houses go higher. If everybody's able to afford to buy a car, prices go higher. The challenge is there is a perceived moral benefit to go to higher education. The problem with every time this is shown, I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat, the statement is always, if you go to college, the story is you make a higher amount of income, so it encourages people to go to education. The problem is, unlike any rational scientific experiment, you're not holding the control set. The people that show the most discipline and hard work, and less honestly, innate intelligence, grit and discipline and hard work trump any innate intelligence. Those are the people that succeeded in elementary school and high school and then go on. So the control set to say you make more money is inaccurate. I have a daughter that goes to Stanford. If you took the kids that went to Stanford and you dropped them in the local community college, and you took the kids in the local community college and dropped them at Stanford, I can tell you which cohort of kids I think is more likely to be successful over life. So it's extremely important to understand that when you take on education, you have a purpose. The purpose can be a broad understanding of learning, but you can learn in your life, and you will keep learning. I guarantee you, all the old guys, I'm certainly the oldest guys, you never stop reading and learning. You should never. It's a terrible thing. But the educational component that leads to a professional course should have merit. And the students and the parents and the entire community should hold schools more accountable for the results that they achieve. Something that we advocate in Washington, we have people that work for us, is we wish all the schools would have a stake in a loan. So if a student borrowed $100,000, I think the school should have to have $20,000 or $30,000 on the hook if the student isn't able to pay for it. So if the student defaults, the school would have to pay. I think schools would be more demanding of their students, and they would be more thoughtful in making sure people that incur the indebtedness can really repay it. We hope that there'll be better solutions, and we hope that people won't fall for the normal political traps of you go to college, you make a lot more money, you go to law school, you'll be a lawyer, you make a lot of money. There are no guarantees in life, and the only way that you will understand that is to ask really tough questions of schools and how people are doing, what happens to people that graduate, and then understand your responsibility to make the most of the decisions you've taken.
So are you saying that the government is a contributing factor to the high prices of universities and colleges today?
If anybody can make an example to the contrary, it's like saying there is no gravity. I mean, there is no way. If government didn't exist in providing loans, the cost of education would go down dramatically because there is no competition. Everyone charges basically whatever they want. If anyone wants to go to school, it is completely illogical that there is no price competition. Why is there no price competition? Why is there no way to reduce 4 years of college into 3? There is no desire, because it's a business. It is a business to derive that revenue. And it does not benefit the consumer of that business.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And another observation I've found is, a lot of people talk about technology and how innovative technology can reduce costs to the consumer, right? You look at every other industry and you see the power of technology be able to reduce costs of production to be able to yield a better product or service for somebody at a lower cost, right? We've all seen this. If you look at higher education, and it seems like it's immune to this concept. There's all this technological innovation going on every day, but the price of education keeps steadily increasing at a rate faster than inflation over the past 30 years. If I were an investor and I could invest in that, I'd be like, that's money right there, right? It's raising at a rate faster than inflation year in, year out for over 30 years right now, whereas in every other industry that has been touched by technology, costs are reducing. Doesn't make any sense, right?
That's a great point. There's only 2 industries in the United States that have had zero, in fact, negative productivity increases over the last 30 years. You named one. Can anyone guess the other one? What's the other one that the government touches the most? Nobody can guess. It's a big debate in Congress right now about it. Healthcare and education are the only 2 industries. The the only two industries in the country that have negative productivity. If anyone can name another industry that there's more government involvement, I'd love to hear it. Love to hear it. Not phones, not food. Food is amazing. Food is actually amazing. When I went to college, to go eat out at a cheap place pretty much cost what it eat out today. I mean, it is unbelievable what's happened in food. But government has destroyed the value equation in healthcare and in education through massive subsidies.
Would anyone else like to follow up?
Okay, great. Let's go to the next question. This is for you, Ken. How, as a student, how would you figure out the right amount of debt to take on for the career he or she is looking to pursue?
That's a great question. It's a question on a lot of students' minds, given the cost of college. And first and foremost, you gotta start figuring out what goal you really have. And also you gotta recognize by the time you graduate, that goal might be completely different. For years and years we had a United States astronaut program, and people would say, oh, I dream to become an astronaut. But now we see that astronaut program dramatically changed where it's not the same path as it was. Guess what? It's not the same path to a lot of roads to success. It used to be if you could just copy someone who did it in the past and you could do the same thing. Our economy is changing so fast that you're training for jobs that don't exist yet. So how do you do this? Step by step. Inch by inch, it's a cinch. If you're not sure what you want to commit to right away, or you're not sure about the cost you're dealing with, try going to community college for 2 years. Get your degree started that way. Then transfer up to a bigger school based on the type of grades you're getting, and maybe it'll be better to not have so much debt. The point I'm trying to make is you don't want to be weighed down with debt early on if you're not sure what you want to do. Once you start getting knowledgeable about what you're doing, maybe you get an internship, maybe you start learning about what you like, maybe you start learning about what you don't like. Sometimes you go to classes just to learn about what you don't like. And that's okay. Because you might have had a vision of something you were going to achieve and it turns out it's not the path for me. Well, at least if you made a pragmatic choice to go to a lower cost school alternative early on, you reduce your overall need for debt. Now you get to maybe your junior year, you transfer to a big name school, you have good grades. Now you pick out a major where it's worthwhile to commit a certain amount of debt to it because you know the knowledge you're gaining has real economic viability now. I look at different types of knowledge sets, right? You have humanities-based knowledge, which I love. I call it ancient knowledge. It's been around for a long time. The Bible was written thousands of years ago. There's tons of knowledge still there today, right? Then you have new knowledge, STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Economically relevant right now. Probably get yourself a job right away. There's schools that just run training for Ruby on Rails, which is just learning how to code a certain way for computer programs and websites and stuff like that. You can get really trained in Ruby on Rails and get a job right away working for certain technology companies making lots of money. You don't necessarily have to graduate from college. Alright, so that's the type of information you can learn right now to make money with very quickly. Balancing those two types of knowledge bases out and recognizing the value in each one is really going to dictate how much debt you should put towards it. And one more thing, how much resources does it take for you to learn? Some knowledge has been out there forever. You can go on the internet and find it for free. Other specialized knowledge you need to get from experts in certain STEM fields might be worth the extra payment, the extra debt that's incurred because you know the value added will get you that job or that place you need to be paid all back. And that's kind of like the tough choice, the tough question, step by step. That's the process that I see students taking to make sure they're keeping their debts within range and connected to the right career.
Great answer. Anyone else would like to follow up?
There have been a number, that was a great answer. There are a number of really good books on this topic. The easiest one is a short one by Bill Bennett. It's titled Is College Worth It? It's incredibly easy to read and it's incredibly insightful.
We are going to wrap this up with questions from the audience now. Does anyone have a question? Back there?
You guys were talking about how the government, they usually have hands on education and healthcare, which has plummeted the revenue rates or whatever. Wouldn't it be employment as well? Because education is affiliated with employment.
I didn't hear the question.
So you're trying to clarify
Yeah.
how government's making prices higher.
Yeah, you guys listed 2 examples, and you guys asked if there's a third one, please speak out. And that's what I want to know.
Well, yeah, with government and employment.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, the government doesn't create employment, it redistributes money.
No, I'm not stating that.
I didn't understand the
Can you
question.
repeat your question, Roberta?
No, I was saying you guys listed 2 examples of something that the government usually has their hands on,
Yeah,
such as education and healthcare, correct?
yes.
You guys stated, you guys asked if there's a third one, please speak out. And I said employment, because education is affiliated with employment. So if there's some interference with education, it's going to have some reaction on the employment.
well, I think maybe you're under the assumption that employment directly stems from education, and it does in a certain way. But the thing is, it's not necessarily a straight line. You know, there's a lot of little bumps in the road that get from point to point B. You can have a degree in something, but it doesn't necessarily equate to a job in something. I mean, you hear all that all the time, especially in the past decade. People get a degree in one thing, get a job in something completely different, right? It's not necessarily always straight line connections from point A to point B. So when you read those statistics that say, X percentage of college graduates get jobs, there's always exceptions to the rule that fall out of that category, so you can't say it's straight guaranteed.
I think our point was that the involvement of the government in those 2 industries has created a real increase in the cost in those industries. You're right, government does impact employment, and that's probably a more interesting political topic. My general view is it probably doesn't help there, but we're just talking about the inflation costs that are incurred in those other 2 industries.
I have another question. You gave an example of if you take students from Stanford and put them in community college, and basically vice versa.
Yeah.
What were you really trying to get at by saying that?
But what I was saying is when they use the statistics, they always say that if you went to 4-year college, you make a certain amount of money. And if you just graduated from high school, you make less money. I can tell you that probably the 3 most successful people of our generation, multiple generations, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and Mark Zuckerberg didn't go to college. That what matters isn't just saying, I take LeBron James and said, he was going to be a really good basketball player if he goes to college or not. And the same thing happens for people. You can't take the cohort of people that went to Harvard and say Harvard just made them. They were really disciplined, successful. And the statistic is, I think, a misleading statistic because you've already selected for people equivalent to LeBron James or Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg. They're incredibly talented, and you mask the reality. The school obviously has an impact, but it matters immensely, the raw material. And by the way, the schools go to great efforts to try to have the best raw material to demonstrate their own success.
Would anyone else like to follow up? Okay, great. Next question, please.
Hi, my name is Sean Pasha. I'm from college. My question was, how big of are student loans going to have in the next decade? This is really well.
Look, indebtedness, I don't care how you describe it, retards economic growth. The country has incurred an enormous amount of indebtedness over the past 3 decades. Government indebtedness, household indebtedness, mortgage indebtedness, consumer indebtedness, it hurts growth rates. It's impossible for it. The way the world works is when you pay for something, the objective is that you have a return on it. To the extent that you have a return above it, enterprise creates wealth. To the extent you have a return below it, it retards the advancement. So if you invest in infrastructure and the roads get better and commerce is easier and less costly, we all get richer. If you invest in people's education, and that education leads people to have successful careers and pay taxes, but more relevantly, the skills learned create value. Because I think people always look on it, I got money. But the way you got money is because you got skills that created value inherently. That creates a societal benefit. If you incurred debt and the skills that you got not only didn't provide any value, but it took years away. It retards the society's advancement. It's got to have some payoff.
Yeah, I for sure agree with that. We already see the effects happening right now in multiple ways of measurement. I mean, for one, there's a lot of people in their 20s right now who would be thinking about getting married and having children who are concerned about their student loan debt. You talked about it, it's true. There's a lot of people who would be interested in buying a house right now. We're in a housing market full of people trying to make deals. You know, they're not buying houses because they're thinking about how am I going to get my student loans back up first. And these are people who have high income, who have successful careers, who are still sitting on a ton of student loan debt, who are having concerns about making life decisions because of the amount of debt they have. That's the point we're at right now. There's over $1 trillion in student loan debt. When I was growing up, I'm 32. When I was growing up, I remember everybody talking about credit card debt. Oh, credit card debt, what's going to happen? It's going down. It's less than student loan debt. More people have committed to a higher amount of student loan. There's over $1 trillion of that. There's about 850, 800 billion or so in credit card debt. And you think about the one silver lining I see in that statistic is that when you were using credit cards, you were mostly buying what? Consumer-based goods built where? Probably overseas, creating jobs for who? Someone else far away, which is how global economies work, right? But when you use student loan debt, what are you buying? Human capital development where? Located in the United States, employed by who? People who are working in our economy, your neighbors, your friends, your teachers, and everybody else is working within that system in our nation, right? So at least the money is being spent domestically. But at the end of the day, that debt still needs to get repaid, and now we're not using it towards real estate. We're not using it towards other expenses involved in raising families and whatnot. And yes, this will have a long-term impact, for better or for worse, on our economy.
Would you be able to offer a few alternatives? Obviously, you said the government is not the best route. Do you have any other alternatives in mind?
Our company, LendKey, offers a private student loan consolidation that really helps people get out of debt. If you have the private student loan debt, you're trying to find a way to knock it off, or maybe you're sitting on a rate that's much higher, irreflective of the risk you are after graduating from college. Remember, when you first start, and you mentioned 3 points about this, when you first start as a freshman, you're at highest risk. But once you graduate and you have a degree and you're successfully employed, you are at much less risk. Should the interest rate you have in your application reflect that lower risk? Absolutely. If you were sitting on a 10 or 12% interest rate loan from a much higher rate from someone else, guess what? You can move yourself down to a much lower rate of consolidation program. I know SoFi offers one. We offer one from LendKey as well, and it's changing people's lives financially. It's the difference between living in mom's basement and moving out for some people. If you get what I mean, that's the type of student loan debt solution that I like to see happen.
Is there any legislation or proposed legislation in the works to facilitate or to alter student loans?
The government passed legislation this past year, they do almost every year, changing the authorizations for the interest rate levels. Truthfully, I think it is unlikely that you're going to get any kind of, there is no, governmental things are about trying to have a happy, nice answer. This is about, hard work to figure out. I think it would be wonderful if they limited the amounts, because it would reduce the amounts of money and it would introduce competition, but I don't think that's about to happen.
Great. Well, thank you guys for coming. Let's give a round of applause to our